going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch, and there was a patch that dropped today which changed quite a few heroes substantially that I want to break down for you today. The changes to Bastion has had the community in quite a tizzy, and it seems Blizzard was keen to respond quite quickly to make sure things don't get out of hand with the new Bastion meta. Now, I will say more videos need to be made about countering Bastion, and those take longer to compile and to make, and we're working on that. A new hero just dropped, so there's all that craziness from yesterday. But Blizzard is listening to your guys' feedback, leaving on the forums and whatnot, so they're taking measures to deal with the indestructible Bastion problem. Namely of which, there's a general update that makes a rule for the game that would apply to all characters, you'd assume, that the total damage reduction that a hero can receive while buffed, example from Ana's Nano Boost and Orisa's Fortify, has been capped at 50%, formerly 70%. What that means is, when we're stacking abilities that increase resistance, there's a straight up cutoff at 50%, which I think is smart. Because if you could just stack resistance forever and forever, you get those really wonky situations like with the Bastion issue that we've spoke about from the PTR, where if you nano boost a Bastion in turret form, he's functionally unkillable, surviving all sorts of ultimates, intense amounts of damage. It makes the gameplay bad, and that should have been fixed anyway. But even more so, Ironclad in its own right is getting nerfed to only be 20% instead of 35%. To be honest, even 20% is really strong, and it doesn't change the playstyle of Bastion. It's just sort of the numerical issues of focusing it down and it getting pocketed, you trying to get damage amp. Interactions in a big hectic team fight are kind of hard to track. No matter what, if you're in a simple 1v1 versus it, that 20% damage resistance is going to be scary for you, but it's more so in terms of the expectations of when it should die. Hopefully 20% is closer to where it feels good to play, because I think undoubtedly it was true that at 35%, whether he's counterable or not, was not very fun to play against. And the developers even admit that after introducing the new Ironclad passive ability in the last patch, Bastion felt a little too difficult to deal with. This reduction maintains his survivability while he's transformed, but shouldn't feel so overbearing to enemies. I guess we'll see if that's the case. 20% is still quite a bit, considering the fact that he can heal himself as well, and by the nature of his playstyle, probably has other things protecting him. But moving on to the last and the most interesting change, in my opinion, Zarya's particle barrier, both for her self-barrier and her projected barrier for her friendlies, no longer protects against knockback. But this is more of a fix to something that should have been the case already, I guess. But because it's difficult to implement, it seems like it didn't work properly the first time. So this is how it works. If the boop ability happens outside of the Zarya barrier, it doesn't affect her, because it physically can't touch her, if that makes sense. The barrier still protects it. But if you somehow pierce the barrier, in that if you do a melee attack to the character, it will in effect go through the barrier and will knock her around. Now, I get a little confused with this because the damage of Ryan's hammer gets absorbed by the barrier, but somehow the hammer still pierces it, so to speak, and boops her around. Fine, fair enough. Ryan's hammer boop wasn't that big to begin with, but you can think about the plays that this can create when Ryan's trying to boop another Reinhardt out of the way in order to set up an Earth Shatter. This is actually pretty big. As we saw Miro from Lunatic High try to close out Street's phase on King's Row, failed to do so because of Zarya bubbles. Now that wouldn't be the case. That big play might go the other way with this new patch. Also, I think part of this is to set up Orisa, the new tank, having sort of that role of a character that can't be moved. So now that Zarya bubbles are able to be booped in some contexts, Orisa can't. But to be honest, not exactly sure if I think that's enough to give that playstyle any credence, considering that Zarya bubbles still do protect you from knockback in all sorts of other situations, just not if you can pierce the barrier, which is a specific set of things. And what are those things? Well, Winston, just like Ryan's hammer, is a melee attack, and that pierces barriers, so to speak. So that's going to boop her around as well. D.Va as well, her shift ability, that will pierce through. It's actually quite a big one, as D.Va boop is one of her best abilities that she has. But if you're Lucio, you can pierce the barrier, quote unquote, by sticking your weapon through the barrier and touching her directly. But if you try to boop her from outside the bubble will block it. So what this means is that if you can get the blast inside of the bubble somehow, the boop will still connect. But it's difficult to do so because, like, I throw my Junkrat mine at the bubble and it just bounces off. But if I lay the mine on the floor and she walks over it and stands on the mine, therefore accidentally piercing the barrier, she actually gets flown away because the mine is exploding inside the bubble. So a little bit tricky to try to pull something like this off, but I think an interesting change nonetheless, and definitely some information that you want to be wielding when you go into battle yourself. If you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, please hit the like button, it really does help us out. Subscribe for more, because we upload each and every day, so you're going to want to hit the bell icon so you can get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitch page, our Discord server, and our Twitter, where you can see updates, cool clips, and ramblings about the game. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.